A huge fire blazes, consuming everything in its path. Smoke and ash spread around the area as people try to contain the flames. If this fire reaches the warehouse, they'll be in big trouble. Everyone gathers, grabbing water buckets to try to douse the fire while they wait for their leader to arrive. A man orders them to get more people, stating that the fire is too ferocious. The more water they throw on it, the more furious it becomes, igniting their desperation. Suddenly, a man arrives, not understanding what is happening. He shouts, "Where are Jian and his wife?" A bystander informs him that they have taken shelter in the annex away from the flames, so he shouldn't worry. Suddenly, the building collapses under the pressure of the fire, and they all run away as it falls, tossing their buckets aside and almost falling over themselves. One of the men urges the newcomer to get to safety, but he is frozen in place. In the next scene, a boy informs his mother that he's scared. His mother tells him not to worry, his father will take care of everything. As the boy looks at her, he feels uncertain, but she reassures him that everything is fine. The next day, the sun is shining, leaving a huge pile of rubble in the area. The man informs the great master Geumo that the fire didn't spread much and has been contained well. Geumo mentions that he has a small skill, the ability to read fortunes. He reveals that only bad news has come to Master Zhang recently and briefly looks at the child's fortune. The leader initially thinks something bad will happen to the child, but that is not exactly the case. Perhaps there will be a misfortune coming to the family, but Geumo honestly doesn't know how to put it into words. Anxious, the leader prompts him to speak clearly. Will the family business collapse, or is the child destined for an early death? Geumo reassures him that this is not the case. The child will have a long and strong life, so he won't die young. However, the fortune surrounding the family indicates a direct intrusion, leading to a situation where the land cracks. In simple terms, wealth will come in, but it will be like pouring water into a broken jar. The hole in the jar is larger than the wealth coming in. Thus, it is natural that the fortune will dry up. The leader questions if Geumo is saying that their son is the hole in the jar, destined to ruin their family. Lowering his head, he declares that the heavens are truly heartless. They have gone through so much to have a son. Geumo comments that there is a solution, which is why he came to discuss the matter with Master Zhang. If he entrusts the child to a high monk of great fortune and has him learn to live a frugal life, it can at least partially block the hole in the jar. This is a good thing. However, he is his precious only son, born after he turned 40. Now his son must become a monk. Wouldn't that just end their family line? Geumo clarifies that the boy need not become a monk until he turns 18, when his character solidifies. That way, there will be no issues afterward. Luckily, Geumo knows of a suitable place to entrust the child. When the time comes, he will come to take him. Grateful, the leader thanks him from the bottom of his heart. Geumo modestly declares that it is all because the Buddha has taken pity on the fortunes he has accumulated. He says a mantra about karma before departing. In the next scene, the boy struggles, not wanting to leave. He wants to hold his mother. She does not want her only son to leave. But her husband assures her that she must be strong, as he has already informed her of the situation. The boy struggles desperately, calling for his mom, but the servants are getting beaten. Her husband explains that this is a reputable monk who has informed them of the situation, so the boy will be in good hands. However, the monk is infamous for his temper, which is why everyone avoids him. How can they send their son to someone like him? Her husband explains that she shouldn't talk like that. The monk's fortune is so great that people like them cannot possibly understand him, so she must wait just 10 years, no more, no less. She contemplates his words for a moment before silently agreeing, but that doesn't stop her from wanting to chase after her son. She cries as her husband holds her. Seeing his son struggle, his father declares that if he doesn't go, their family might be ruined, and they could all die. The fate of the family rests on his shoulders. Tears fill the boy's eyes as he is just a child who doesn't understand the situation. Luckily, the guards manage to lock him inside, but that doesn't stop him from trying to break the door down. The carriage is then taken away as a monk remains behind to talk with them. In a beautiful mountain area filled with trees and butterflies, He stands alone as the carriage drives off, looking like an abandoned cat. He cries and struggles, but nothing changes. He has to accept the reality that he will have to live with this scrawny old man for the next 10 years. In the next scene, the boy sits at a table while the monk works with vegetables. The boy is really bored. He can't just stand there doing nothing. He is a young child who needs to play and have fun. He spots a broom and starts sweeping up some leaves, causing a lot of dust to spread around the area. The monk inquires why he bothers to sweep the leaves when they will just pile up again. The boy comments that it is already piled high. He insists that he only wants to learn martial arts and is trying to impress him, but that won't work. The boy claims that wasn't his intention. Becoming irritated, the monk tells him that he is a typical merchant's child and should stop whatever he is doing. He has no intention of teaching him Shaolin martial arts. His remarks makes the boy angry. He approaches the man and tells him that he didn't come here to learn martial arts. Seeing the fire in the boy's eyes, the monk is surprised. He did not like being around people and had spent 30 years living alone in the mountains. He refused to take disciples, saying it was too much of a hassle and that he wasn't good enough to teach. Even Shaolin had given up on him, leaving him to do as he pleased, having disappointed them all. An old monk had given him wisdom, advising that when he gets older, loneliness becomes overwhelming. With no one to care for him, he'll feel isolated, so he should consider bringing that boy to live with him. But he had refused. Why should he take care of such a child? The old Shaolin monk explained that this request was a fate given by Buddha. From what he gathered, the abbot's boy was the son of a famous merchant, suggesting that they were to receive a favor. But when it became difficult to accept him, the old monk left the boy to him. Quivering with doubt, the monk refused to believe that the boy did not come to learn martial arts. Why had he come to this deep mountain? No matter how much he protested, his parents surely expected him to learn martial arts. The monk declares that he will teach him a few moves, so he should stop bothering him and go back home. The boy, becoming irritated, throws down his stick, shouting that he didn't want to come here either. He explains that everyone said he was cursed and had to spend 10 years with a high monk, otherwise everyone would die. The monk thinks that his parents were despicable, just devising a connection with him at the cost of their own child. What's even worse is for Shaolin to accept the child despite knowing this. The monk declares that he cannot stand to see boys with guts cry and orders him to stop. As if on command, the boy stops. The monk orders him to change his clothes, saying they have been bothering him since he first saw them. He tells the boy not to stretch his clothes. They are a hindrance in the mountains. However, these were picked by his mother because they were the plainest clothes he had. In the next scene, he is given leaves and rice to eat. The monk informs him that he must avoid using fire. Eating food touched by fire makes a person's temperament become fiery as well. He emphasizes that one must always meditate with a devoted heart, for they wouldn't be able to maintain discipline if they frequently got angry. Jian, not really understanding, reflects on the fact that his clothes are itchy. How will he survive this for 10 years? However, he is curious. If Geumo eats this food every day, why does he get angry so often? This question catches the monk off guard. He doesn't know when he's ever gotten angry. The boy explains that earlier he was calling him this and that, swearing at him. The boy thinks the monk really hates him. That's why he's giving him this inedible food. This is the first time someone has stood up to him like this, or perhaps the boy was teasing him. But his eyes are so innocent, indicating genuine curiosity. The monk explains that there's no need to use fire. He can eat it just fine without cooking it. He questions why he should bother with fire since it would be better to live frugally and save firewood. Jian argues that firewood is all over the mountain. If it's a hassle, he can gather some. The monk insists that he should only pick up what's fallen on the ground since they shouldn't harm anything alive in the temple. This angers the monk, and he declares that just because it's on the ground doesn't mean it's waste. Over time, it will rot and enrich the soil, helping the plants and trees grow better. The boy has a revelation that he shouldn't steal food from the plants and trees. This surprises the monk, who is taken aback by the boy's strange interpretation. He has another thought. If the boy keeps wandering around in his clothes, they will wear out, and he won't be able to wear them for 10 years. The monk ponders if he is rebelling because he gave him shabby temple clothes. It's almost as if he is losing this battle. Seeing this, the monk orders him to stop talking and eat. He agrees and eats, but it tastes awful. After finishing it all, the boy declares that he's still hungry. The monk explains that if he's too full, he will become lazy, which is a sin in spiritual practice. That night in the forest, the boy struggles to relieve himself. The monk observes him, knowing that eating raw food without cooking it isn't easy. He questions what kind of gourmet food will be served to him. The monk insists he'll have to get used to it, or he won't be able to survive. It's only been 2 weeks, but the boy feels starving. Every time he eats, he has to relieve himself. Maybe he should look for fruits in the mountains, he ponders. But he has no strength. Later, the monk questions where he has been, wandering around, and he expresses surprise. Jian's hands are red and his shoes are worn. The monk comments that he might have to buy new clothes from roaming around the mountains, and they notice that his shoes are in bad condition. The boy explains that he was just hungry, but the monk wonders how he can be hungry when he's eating every day. He argues that he's only hungry because he's wandering around. The boy feels the portions are too small, and he gets diarrhea after eating. However, if he is having diarrhea, it means he's not hungry enough yet. People can survive on eating anything, they say. He'll survive if he believes he can, and if he thinks he can't eat, then he can't. It's hard to live like that, he replies, but it's even more difficult to do good deeds that bring blessings than to avoid sin that brings punishment. Hardships are part of virtue, and even today, ascetic practice is tough as it helps him accumulate more merit. Still, this doesn't help him. His words are difficult, and the boy is starving to death. He knows the man has no intention of helping him, but he wonders what he can do if this keeps up. He might starve to death. The monk tells him that he has somewhere to go, so he should stay there quietly. The boy realizes that if he stays put, he won't get hungry, so he decides to sleep all the time. He smiles brightly, which causes the monk to wonder why he is smiling. In the next scene, inside a small hut, Jian is sprawled on his bed, drooling. The monk questions why he can't get up. The sun is rising, and he is lounging around. The boy declares that the monk told him not to move around unnecessarily. If he moves too much, he'll get hungry, so he is trying to sleep instead. The monk clarifies that being lazy and not moving unnecessarily are two different things. To him, Jian is nothing more than a beast wasting food. The monk leaves and tells him to stop messing around, leaving the boy in an awkward position, surprised and not fully understanding the situation. Later, through the door, he observes the monk with a bead in his hand. He notices that the monk is rolling his prayer beads as if he is reciting sutras like other monks. Jian approaches him and questions whether he is reciting sutras. However, he only knows that monks do this with a wooden bell and reads aloud from a book. The monk explains that it's in the depth of the mountain. It doesn't matter if he makes noise or attracts attention. I read with my eyes and strike the bell with my heart, he says. This feels strange no matter how Jian looks at it. The monk inquires if Jian wants to chant loudly for no reason, saying that making noise only makes him hungrier, not more enlightened. In anger, the boy reflects that he avoids making noise during sutra recitation because he doesn't want to eat too much. The monk tells him to stop disturbing him and go back inside. With a defeated expression, Jian walks away. No matter what he says, he is always scolded, and the conclusion is always the same. That's when he thinks, what if I follow exactly what the monk does? I won't get in trouble, will I? Even if I do, at least I would have something to show for myself. Later, as he lies in bed, the monk suddenly cleans up his sleeping spot in the blink of an eye. The monk notices that he is awake and remarks that if he is awake, he shouldn't just sit there, he should clean up his bedding. The sun hasn't even risen yet. Where is he going in such a rush? He believes he has no choice but to follow him, so he folds his bedding, though he can't do it as well as the old man. Maybe this is also part of not moving unnecessarily. However, there is no time, so he runs out to catch the monk. Jian quickly follows behind the monk, hiding behind trees with quick movements. The monk, with swift movement, jumps up to the top of the rocks. He was so fast that the boy could barely see what happened. The monk takes a seat on top of the rock, and Jian follows his lead. While the other monks train, another monk meditates. Jiangmok hasn't moved an inch, and it has been more than an hour. Jian ponders if he could be sleeping. Suddenly, he is overcome by the urge to eat due to his hunger. The monk inquires if he is protesting. Holding his stomach, the boy tells him, No, that's not the case. The monk explains that if he's going to follow him, he should do so quietly. The boy declares that he's hungry, so he can't help it. The monk comments that even meditating in peace is tough. He exhales through his mouth and inhales through his nose. This catches the boy's attention, and he questions what that white thing coming out of his mouth is, which went straight into his nose, is. Seeing that the boy is full of curiosity, the monk realizes that it's not a secret technique if he doesn't teach him the chance. He reveals that they practice what he is doing right now with this secret internal energy method passed down to only a few in Shaolin. It's called Yijin Jing, Muscle Tendon Change Classic. What he saw is called Qi. It's the essence and foundation of all things in the universe. It is like smoke, existing everywhere in the universe. By absorbing it into your body, a person can live a healthier and more energetic life. The boy realizes that the old man never feels hungry. He has been secretly absorbing qi all along. The monk explains that as the boy gets used to it, he'll be able to absorb qi into his entire body. When it accumulates in his body, it becomes what martial artists call internal energy. The boy realizes he should have thought of eating air instead of feeling hungry all the time. It's best for him to secretly learn how to absorb qi like the old man does, so he can show off to him later, telling him he's not hungry at all. The monk elaborates that it's fine if the boy wants to stay by his side during his morning practice, but he must never interfere or touch anything. The boy walks away and sits at his usual spot behind the tree. The monk reflects on the fact that if the boy had asked more, he might have even taught him a Taoist technique. As Jian ponders, how does one even absorb qi from the air? A bit of time passes, and the sun begins to rise, shining its light upon him. He gets up and, as he looks around, thinks that the boy is impressive. Even young novice monks who have just entered can't sit in the lotus position for even half an hour, let alone 2 hours. His perseverance is not ordinary. As they walk back to the hut, the boy's legs are trembling and feel numb. He ponders how the master is completely fine. His legs seem to be perfect, and he's walking slowly, but it feels like he's gliding, almost as if he's a ghost. The monk tells him to stop complaining, but when he takes a closer look, the boy's shoulders hardly move, and he doesn't swing his arms either. His feet barely touch the ground as he walks lightly, moving as little as possible to avoid getting hungry. He hadn't noticed it before since he wasn't paying close attention, but now he sees it clearly. There's no wasted movement in his daily actions. At home he's busy observing him, currently moving around. It's as if every movement is calculated. The monk tells him to focus on eating when it's time to eat, and the boy does as ordered. The monk notices that the boy has been following him since dawn, observing his every move. It seems he's trying to mimic his actions. In the next scene, it becomes more obvious. The monk questions if the boy understands what he's reading. The book he picked up is the Sahipajin, which contains teachings and duties for monks after ordination. It's not too difficult, but for an 8-year-old, it would be a challenging book. The boy declares that he's already finished the 1,000-character classic. He is in the middle of studying the Analects and Mencius. The boy comments that it's true this scripture is too hard for him to read on his own. He's not a disciple of the Buddha. How does he aspire to be so? There's no need to read the scriptures. He muses that there isn't much for him to read. It's a hassle, but he might have to get in the 4 books and 5 classics after all. But why would he go so far for this child when he's going to tire himself out and leave? Later, the boy reflects on the fact that his legs are going numb again, but he's no longer wandering around looking for food, as he's not as hungry as usual. He looks through the door, wondering if his master is going to rest now, but what he sees is surprising. He approaches the master as he makes a strange pose, then begins to follow the master's movements. That's when the master realizes the boy has nothing to do, so he will copy him all day long. The master wants to see how far he can go with that. One after another, he begins to make different poses, each more complicated than the last. His movements may be slow, but he can possibly keep up. As a result, he falls to the ground. The master smiles. There's no chance of him copying him if he just does it blindly. The study of the I Ching Jing must be in an advanced phase to be able to do the training properly. The boy inquires why he is even doing this. Didn't he say they shouldn't move unnecessarily to avoid hunger? The master inquires how keeping his body healthy is a waste of energy. If a person doesn't move, the body stiffens. By moving the body, you can help the circulation of energy and blood, making it healthy. However, why doesn't he do it quickly? The boy can't do it if he keeps moving slowly. The master contemplates that there's no way a boy like him can beat him. His determination is admirable, but there's no way he's going to teach him Shaolin martial arts. The master explains that what he's doing isn't just moving slowly, it's about concentration of the mind and observing the body. The slower he moves, the more clearly he can see what's happening inside his body. When a person takes a step, he will notice which muscle moves, observe how his arms move, and how he breathes. Once he gets used to it, he can even sense the movement of each tiny hair in his body. This is the way for him to achieve the greatest effect with the least amount of effort, by eliminating unnecessary movement and focusing more on energy and its essential parts. That way, he can accomplish much more with less effort. The boy remembers his father's words that the merchant must generate the maximum profit with the minimum cost. That is what defines a merchant. Both of them are saying the same thing. Strangely, it feels like there's a hole in his chest. He declares that he still doesn't know what to do, but he'll give it a try. The boy is more persistent than the monk expected. By now, he thought he would cry and run down the mountain. If the boy decides to leave, he may even teach him a few martial arts moves before that. Next, we take a look at the Shaolin Temple's main hall. The monk reflects on the fact that the alcohol and food recorded in the ledger are correct, but there is little compared to what was left last year. They receive more offerings than 2 years ago, but he can't figure out why it is like this. The monk comments that there has been an increase in pilgrims visiting during the summer, yet donations have decreased. The offerings from the lay disciples are only going to be half this year. It seems that everyone is going through some kind of difficult circumstances. Expenses have also been rising more than usual in other areas, which is troubling. Next year will be tough for everyone. It's as if the wealth is leaking away like water from a cracked pot. Back at the small hut, snow falls, and the boy is sick, sneezing and coughing as the monk reads his book. He shivers, reflecting on the fact that at home, he was sweating because it was so hot. This is just too much for him. It's so cold here there isn't even a fire lit in the room, nor has he been given any winter clothes. You wouldn't think that he's stubborn. The cold should make him complain and ask to go down to lower quarters, but he hasn't said a word. This is a problem. If he leaves him like this, a precious child from another household might die. The monk decides to check the furnace, which hasn't been used in a long time. However, the boy is sick and shivering, his lips cracked. He does this because he does want to be abandoned. Later, the monk lights the furnace, bringing warmth to the child. Thinking about it, this is all the head monk's fault. He knows he hates dealing with people, so why did he leave the child here? The child is really bothersome. However, something's odd. The room is warm, yet his cough is getting worse. He resolves to go to the main hall and get some medicine, but if he does that, it raises the question of why he didn't take proper care of a child in the first place. Still, he knows in his heart that he can't just sit here waiting for him to recover. The boy coughs loudly and calls for his mother. This caused a reaction in the monk. The boy had now put him in a difficult position. He tears off the boy's robe, revealing his true body. He makes the boy sit and declares, "Stay still and don't move." Placing his hands on the boy's back, he begins to infuse him with his internal energy as a last resort. Losing internal energy would set him back several years of training, but since the boy hasn't learned any internal energy techniques, his meridians are not fully opened. He can circulate his energy with a breathing technique, so he'll have to force open his meridians by attacking all of his pressure points. By receiving 10 years' worth of Jing internal energy, an ordinary person could live healthily as if they've taken an elixir of life. The only problem is that it will make it harder for him to learn other internal energy techniques later on. Later, he makes the boy lie down and rest. At the very least, he won't fall ill for decades. Even if he suffers a serious injury, he will recover much faster than others. He now has the body of a stronger person who is more resilient. However, the monk realizes that his 10 years of training seem to have gone to waste, but it's not like he intended to master martial arts. He doesn't regret it. He thinks of it as saving the poor soul. He neglected this boy because he found the boy bothersome, but he's gotten weaker and much thinner than he expected. When he had first seen him on the mountain, he was a chubby little kid, which led him to wonder why he must suffer like this. It may be all his fault, but he chooses not to dwell on that. He only wanted to distance himself from people to focus on spiritual practice and forget worldly attachments. So why is he feeling this sudden sense of pity? They say that as you age, your heart softens. Now he understands why a master would risk his life for his disciple. If someone else were taking care of this boy, they probably would have doted on him a lot. Perhaps understanding the suffering of others helped him cut off his own attachments. Maybe this is the part of the no-leak wisdom that Buddha spoke of. 3 days later, the young boy finally wakes up. To make it better, his cold is completely gone. He feels more energetic than usual, and his mind is incredibly clear. He has no memory of what happened 3 days ago and is unable to perceive the changes in his own body. Later, in the snowy area, the master and the boy meditate. It's strange. The air is so cold, yet he doesn't feel cold at all. In the past, the cold would have distracted him, but today he feels like he can focus well. Today, he will feel the flow of air. Since the Qi have opened most of his meridians during the acupoint cleansing, it is like a full cleansing of the body's meridians. Others would spend a fortune for something this difficult to achieve. It is as if he has created an opportunity. If the master taught him martial arts right now, he would become quite a skilled warrior, but the master believes that is pointless. If he wants to teach martial arts, he needs to initiate the boy as a disciple and obtain the head monk's permission. To do that, he will have to explain the reasons again. Besides, the boy's physique is not particularly suitable for martial arts, which is a major problem, as he keeps having such distracting thoughts. Suddenly, Jian feels something strange coming from his stomach. As he inhales, he senses a slight tingling in his nose and abdomen. This could be what it feels like to gather energy. It was worth following the master. Now he can gather energy too, meaning he can eat and become full. As the sun rises, the master stops meditating, surprised to see that the child looks excited. He ponders if the boy has learned the breathing technique, but there's no way he could have done that on his own since he has never been taught. It must be because the energy from his cultivation is spreading throughout his body, making him sensitive to it. As he jumps down, he realizes that his body feels heavy, and he cannot seem to adapt. He is experiencing discomfort because he lost 10 years of internal energy all at once and has expanded quite a bit of mental effort during the acupoint cleansing. How did I end up like this? He ponders. He tells the boy to stop, but the boy wants to continue a bit more. Realizing that the master is irritated, the boy quickly runs after him. Later, the boy begins to follow the master once more. He can safely feel the breeze brushing against every single hair. Today, his movements seem different. The master still believes that this is all because of the energy from the boy's cultivation spreading throughout his body. The master explains that reverse energy cultivation improves the muscles and bones to suit martial arts. Therefore, if the boy learns the martial arts of Shaolin while in a state of reverse energy cultivation, his body will become stronger, and his bones will become more resilient. However, since he hasn't learned any martial arts yet, there's no need to overexert himself. The boy declares that he just needs to not be hungry. That's when the master realizes that the boy has been doing all of this just not to feel hungry. With that kind of motivation, it's possible that the energy from reverse cultivation will respond. If this ends up changing the boy's physique, well, That doesn't necessarily have to be a bad thing. Some time passes, and it is now springtime. Due to this occurrence, the boy can eat raspberries and leaves. He continues to learn with his master and is doing a great job, even following his movements exactly. He can meditate for longer in harsh conditions as well as in good ones. He has become so at ease that he can smile while doing it. 3 years later, Geumo comes to visit Shaolin. He is greeted by some apprentice monks. Geumo informed them that the monk he came to see is known as Guangyin. They quickly realize that if he is an old friend of the head monk, he is no ordinary guest. They run off and request that he follow them. However, upon entering the temple, he sees crumbling buildings and questions why they haven't been repaired. The monks explain that it's not that they haven't repaired them. In fact, they've made several attempts to fix them. It's just that the temple lacks the funds to do so. Because of this, they can't even drink good tea. They must drink some cheap tea, and even that is nearly gone for them. Geumo is shocked to see that the face of the unknown has the living Buddha in the martial arts world, strangely lacks its usual glow. He was the one who never compromised on quality tea, no matter what. It's such a strange situation. No matter how much they repair the place, it continues to crumble endlessly, leaving them with no means of support. The altar courtyard receives many visitors, so they have no choice but to maintain it, but the inner courtyard is nearly abandoned. It has been 3 years now. This is when Geumo ponders if this could be because of the child whom he brought 3 years ago, but no matter how badly the boy's fortune is, how could that affect this place? This is the renowned Shaolin Temple. He wasn't even taken in as a disciple, they only cared for the boy temporarily. The idea that Shaolin is falling apart because of him makes no sense. It is most likely a coincidence. Geumo offers his assistance. It may be strange for a monk to talk about money, but if they need it, he could ask for help from Haiwansa. The head monk explains that the harvest in Sadup has been beautiful every year, so they don't have to worry about food. Geumo feels a bit uneasy upon hearing this. A bountiful harvest. Isn't this exactly what he had predicted? Things go well, but they are always more expensive, making it feel like trying to fill a bottomless pit. As a result, he decides to head to the temple hall. He declares that he will perform 10,000 prostrations for Shaolin. This is the physical act of worship that signifies humility, surrender, and adoration. The monk is shocked, questioning if Geumo is truly willing to go that far for Shaolin. His heart feels unbearably heavy, thinking all of this might be his fault. He can't just leave like this, so he walks off to do what he must. No matter how unfortunate the situation is, surely it won't ruin Shaolin. He tries to assure himself that this is nothing but a coincidence, nothing more. The next year, he comes again, and the head monk tells him that he's going to wear himself out at this rate. He needs to consider his age. He's not young anymore to endure 10,000 bows. Geumo questions if things haven't improved this year either. The head monk explains that maybe that's the truth, but it doesn't concern Geumo. It's been 4 years now, and there hasn't been any merit. To make it worse, Yun cannot forcibly stop him. Thanks to Master Geumo, the atmosphere in Shaolin has improved significantly, and a few months ago, even a few monks volunteered to join him in offering 1,000 and eventually even 10,000 bows. They owe him a great debt and plan to work hard so that he won't need to come next year. In the next scene, the protagonist is now 15 years old, and the master is puzzled, inquiring what this is. Geumo explains that this is the morning offering. At first glance, it looks no different from yesterday, but the chopsticks and bowls are arranged so neatly, even the food inside the bowls. The master points at something, inquiring what it is. The boy explains that it is the amaranth he collected from the garden. The master furiously questions why he trimmed it like this. The boy explains that he thought it would be tasty and nice this way. He only removed the inedible parts and the ones that bugs had eaten. It is quite a good talent. He even lined up the grains of rice one by one. Does he not have anything better to do? The master thinks. The boy insists that once you know how, it's quick and easy for him. Which is probably why the master has been feeling indigestion lately. Jian says that the food must be arranged neatly for it to feel natural. The master said something similar last time. The boy goes on a rant about phrases he's repeated, which is quite annoying. Ever since he first saw him, he's been driving the master crazy with strange comments. The master says that they should just eat, but he doesn't feel like arguing with his student today. Later, the master looks up into the sky, past the trees and towards the mountains. Something feels strange in the atmosphere. Maybe it's due to Shaolin's financial troubles, but it can't possibly be only that. He keeps feeling a strange, uneasy sensation that he can't quite pinpoint. Every day is the same, so why does he feel so anxious? This frustration is overwhelming. The boy observes him and wants to know what could be the source of what's bothering him. In the next scene, inside his room, everything has been neatly prepared, and everything is spotless. Now he finally understands why it felt so uncomfortable and frustrating. He just figured out the reason. This isn't just a matter of neatness, it's almost obsessive. In all the 7 years they've been living together, he's never seen him slack off at all. He will become someone great, there's no doubt about it. And his footwork is not bad either. His soles barely touches the ground, and his shoulders barely move at all. It's a bit unpolished, but there's no wasted movement overall. The master knew he was trying to imitate his steps, but when did he start moving like that? The technique can only be mastered by those who know how to control their inner energy. He never taught him any martial arts, and if anyone else finds out, they might think he's secretly learned Shaolin techniques. The master questions how he learned those steps. The boy smiles and declares that he finally managed to do it, just like him, which means he learned it just by watching him. The master believes that he's just an ordinary boy, and his body is not built for that. He doesn't even know what she is, so it's true that he hasn't learned martial arts. The master questions when he started, and the boy explains that until yesterday, he couldn't do it very well, but today it just worked. Also, he hasn't been that hungry lately. The master is stunned and finds it hard to believe. The boy explains that the martial art says that to avoid hunger, you shouldn't waste energy and unnecessary things, so he's been working hard to figure out how to use the least amount of effort for the greatest effect. How can they achieve maximum results with minimum effort? That's the question he asks himself daily. The master wonders if the boy is trying to fool him with nonsense. He questions if the boy believes that he's been moving minimally to avoid hunger, and the boy tells him yes. The master tells him to give him his hand, and touching his hand, he feels the energy around the boy's body and realizes that the boy has built up inner energy. From what he feels in his danjian, he has at least 20 years worth of internal energy. The master never taught him any breathing techniques, and he never had the time to secretly train. So when and how did he accumulate this much inner energy? The only time he could have had it was during those early mornings when he practiced meditation. The master questions the boy about this, and the boy declares that a person can take in as much air as they want, as air is all around them. This means that for 7 years, he has been doing this with that kind of mindset, along with the inner strength from the I Jin Jing he taught him. It must have opened his energy sense, and its consistent practice of understanding Ji Haranggong allowed him to unknowingly accumulate inner strength. The boy questions if there is something wrong with his body, and the master tells him no. Earlier, the steps he performed are called Bol Yang Shin Bo, a footwear technique from Shaolin. The master questions how he immediately steps, and the boy explains and demonstrates all. Upon seeing it with his own eyes, the master begins laughing. It resembles the movement that he does, but it's a different kind of step. What he does involves steps for evasion and counterattack, but the boy's steps aren't for combat. Rather, it looks like he's trying to get to his destination with minimal movement and maximum speed. Still, this is hard to process. There aren't many among the Shaolin second-generation disciples with body control such as that. Most second-generation monks are in their 20s, yet it's a 15-year-old boy moving just like them. Whatever, by chance, are the reasons for this? Is it his consistent practice of Shandong Gong that has transformed his body along with the inner strength? This is not good. There hasn't been any major issues so far, but problems could arise in the future. If he keeps accumulating and uses it recklessly, he could fall into key deviation. So maybe he should teach him the proper way to do it, but he can't just pass on Shaolin's martial arts at his discretion. He needs permission from the abbot to teach him, and how will he explain all of this? in the Shaolin Temple head monk's room. It's a truly fortunate turn of events. The donations from the lay disciples are returning to normal, and it's joyful to hear that the difficulties they've been experiencing are being resolved. Donations are steadily arriving from the lay disciples. The need for financial recovery is soon, and the supervisor Zhang comments that even though they're not fully restored, they won't have to worry for a while. The head monk explains that expenditures are increasing and finances that steadily decrease. The last 2 years have been a very stressful time. This must all be thanks to that friend's merits. Even Buddha did not ignore his virtuous deeds. Since they won't have any issues getting to the year, it seems it's time to speak with the administrators. It's rare for so many disciples to face problems all at once at this time, so they must be prepared for any future occurrence. They should cut back on relief efforts and build up the temple's assets to prevent similar situations in the future. However, the head monk believes that it's not possible. They may not starve even with fewer donations, but there are those who will die if they do not provide relief immediately. How could they turn their backs on those people? They are monks before they are members of a martial sect. There's no shame in being poor. Yoon smiles, and he tells him their hearts are in the same place when it comes to Shaolin, so how could he blame him? In the next scene, we see Jian eating in the forest. He can't replace the fact that the old man has been acting strangely lately. He's been wondering what could be on his mind. If only he would speak openly, he wouldn't have to guess every time. Suddenly, someone questions what he's eating so fervently. Upon seeing the monk, he screams, falling to the ground. The monk apologizes for surprising him. The boy thinks it's all because he didn't sense his presence at all. He lowered his head and introduces himself as Zhang Jian, who lives with Elder Jiangmak. The monk, looking at his loose fit in monk robes, realizes that he truly lives with him. The monk declares that he's seen him several times already and has been watching him from afar. He reminds the boy that he was picking mountain fruits a few days ago, and also that he has his ways of knowing. The monk also knows that he picked the fruit with the technique of Dragon Claw's hand, and his steps. Those were unmistakably phantom shadow steps. His movement suggested he's been properly trained in martial arts, and he ponders if Jiangmak has taught him. However, that guy doesn't have any disciples, so why would he teach this child? More surprising is how he has lived with someone as strict as Geumo for 7 years. He was so harsh when he first came here. Even though he's still constantly strict, Jian looks at the monk and questions who he is to speak about Geumo. The monk declares that he is a higher generation monk, living higher than the current head monk of this Shaolin Temple. The man questions if he is Jiangmak's disciple, and the boy declared that he just lives with him. He's not his disciple. The monk declares that it's strange, as earlier he was using a certain footwork. The boy comments that Jiangmak had said the same thing, but he doesn't know what that is. The monk was flabbergasted.